Ouais. Ah oui. Et on est pas très cool.
Ah, pardon, excusez-moi.
Un truc que j'aime bien, notamment quand tu le sors de ça, tu as le cloud où tu peux connecter à. En fait, tu as un truc qui vient. Et en fait, dans celui-là, c'est un monomagnétique. Mais regarde, que prise de notes et
Normalement, je pourrais les voir là, mais si je mets ça, ça va faire bugger l'écran.
Non, non, c'est pas nécessaire à ce stade, mais
je peux te dire par contre, je suis connecté.
C'est pas encore. Je pourrais également vérifier que nous avons bien, mais je peux me connecter lundi.
Alors actuellement, j'ai un Philippe, j'ai Manus, Corpas, j'ai Panagiotis, c'est tout. Ah non, je sens.
Ok.
Ah non, j'ai plein de monde. Johannes, Thomas aussi, Catherine Hazard, Maxime Brun.
Ok, c'est bon.
Comment ça se fait qu'il y a du monde?
Est-ce que vous avez qu'on a partagé le mauvais lien?
Ouais, je pense que vous avez partagé le mauvais lien.
C'est toi qui as partagé le mauvais lien. Ah, le mauvais, c'est celui de la soutenance.
oui, celui de la soutenance.
Dans lequel il y a les membres.
Ah oui, ok.
Parce qu'il y a un lien YouTube pour
ah oui, d'accord.
Pas le
ouais.
Zoom.
Ah oui, oui, effectivement. Ah, si, j'ai l'impression qu'il y a que des gens d'autres.
Oui, que des gens Can you hear us, Catherine, Philippe, and Magnus?
Yeah, it's perfect for me.
Yes, it works. I very well.
Okay, so I think we can start.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. My name is Olivier Massol. I'm a professor of economics at IFP School. I'm thrilled to be here today. And as you know, a defense is like a theater play. We have all to play a role in this. Today, the part that has been assigned to me is to be the chairman of this committee. So I will be playing this role this morning. So Miss Anaëlle JODRY, we will have the pleasure today to listen to the presentation of your work, your PhD thesis, that has been submitted here at Mille Paris PSL Star. During your presentation, you will provide us with an overview of your results, of your main content of the thesis during 45 minutes, a presentation that will last roughly 35 minutes. And after that, we will have the pleasure to listen to the comments being raised by first two reviewers who have kindly accepted to provide a feedback on your work. These two reviewers will be successively Professor Catherine Hazard-Pantel from INP Toulouse and CSET at the Chemical Engineering Lab. Then we will have the opportunity to listen to the views of Professor Magnus Corpas from Norwegian NTNU in Trondheim. After each of these two presentations, that will last roughly 20 minutes, you will have the opportunity to provide some answers and comments on the suggestions and feedback that will have been provided. And after that, we will have some comments being raised by Professor Philippe Quirion from CIRED. I will be the fourth commentator this morning, providing a feedback. And then we'll have the opportunity to listen to the views of Dr. Faris, Moulaidris El Alawi Faris, who from Air Liquide will provide an informed view on your work. And of course, last but not the least, we'll have an opportunity to listen to the comments being raised by your supervisors and your co-supervisors, so being respectively Pedro Afonso Nogueira and Dr. Robin Girard. Anaëlle, the floor is yours.
So, hello everybody. Thanks for coming. I want to especially thank Olivier Massol, the president of the jury, for the kind introduction. So nowadays, hydrogen has gained a lot of attention because it has a great potential to decarbonize our usage of energy. However, can we really talk about clean energy? Is hydrogen a clean energy? Today, hydrogen is mainly used as a chemical product in oil refining and fertilizers production. Moreover, its production from fossil fuel is highly CO2 emitting. About 2% of the global hydrogen emission, of the global CO2 emission worldwide, according to the International Energy Agency. Used since the 18th century, hydrogen is facing a transition today. According to the IEA, the hydrogen world demand could increase by a factor 1.5 by 2030 to reach zero net emission pathways in 2050. Some new uses of hydrogen may develop in the future, for example, in the transportation sector or in the power sector, but we can see on this graph that industry is expected to stay the biggest hydrogen consumer in the medium term. The steel sector especially could become a big hydrogen consumer. Very recently, geological studies to find natural hydrogen have been initiated, and a site in Mali is in operation, but we don't know yet what it is possible at scale. So for now, hydrogen has to be produced from another energetic resource. In 2022, more than 80% of the hydrogen was produced by steam methane reforming or from coal through coal gasification. According to the IEA, an important development in electrolysis technologies is to be expected in the incoming years, but we can question whether the development rate are reachable or not. Indeed, it would mean that the global electrolysis capacity have to increase by a factor almost 200 in only 7 years, while it only increased by a factor of 3 during the past year. We see that Europe is ambitious regarding the deployment of electrolysis, and the projects are really scaling up. This can be explained by European initiative to speed up hydrogen deployment. For example, we can cite the European Hydrogen Bank, who aims to facilitate investment in renewable hydrogen. Or we can also think about the hydrogen backbone, which is a regroupment of the gas network operator in Europe to build a European hydrogen network. In line with the rest of Europe, France has its own renewable hydrogen deployment strategy, announcing public funding up to 7 billion euros for low carbon hydrogen by 2030. To invest this money, at best, this plan is declined at decisional scale in the different regional strategies. To elaborate the regional strategies, studies at territory scale are needed. Hydrogen is expected to first develop in industrial area where it is already used. So in this work, I took the example of the biggest port in France, Fos-sur-Mer in the south. We identified it as a key territory because it has a high energy demand and a high hydrogen demand. Today, it is about 100 kilotons per year of hydrogen for refinery purposes. And moreover, the basin includes a big steel plant and a nearby geological site where hydrogen storage is possible. As in Europe and the rest of France, big projects are emerging in this area in order to decarbonize industry through electrolysis produce hydrogen. If everything goes as planned, the total electrolysis capacity of the basin could reach 1.5 gigawatts by 2030 for a total production of 240 kilotons per year. We would like to know how this area can fight the increase of the hydrogen demand while still decreasing the industrial emissions, and what could be the role of existing production assets in this territory, and what could be the optimal investment trajectory in the different hydrogen production asset and infrastructure. To answer this question, a lot of parameters and constraints have to be taken into account. For example, the geographical constraints, such as the renewable potential of the area or the grid capacity of the area, are very important and determinant parameter. The different timescales that are involved, so here for the operation of the planning of the investment, or to the minute for the renewable viability, are a challenge to overcome. But the biggest challenge in this work is that the evolution of all the important parameters of the study is unknown and very difficult to predict. So the objectives of this thesis is to develop a methodology to assist decision makers and investors in the deployment of hydrogen. And this methodology has to be flexible enough to take account local constraints. It has to consider the multi-temporality, the different spatial scale, and the sector coupling and the diversity of the technologies. So here is the outline of my presentation. First, I will talk about the model I developed in my work. Then I will present a few key results for the Fos-sur-Mer areas, industrial area. And then I will present you the perspective of this work. We decided to use energy system optimization to reach the stated objectives. It is a useful tool to predict the evolution of a system under constraints. So in the literature, we can find two types of problem. The operation problem, for which we have a known system with fixed capacities, and we want to optimize the operation of the system. And we also have the planning problem, where we want to develop a new energy system and to optimize the investment in the different assets. The first type of problem can be solved by operation production cost model. And for example, in the literature, we can find a lot about the operation of hybrid electricity and hydrogen storage, or what is the place of hydrogen to support the electricity mix, but they are usually focused on electricity. The second category of problem can be solved by capacity expansion models, such as TIMES, which is probably the most known I can think about. And they are usually used to design the future hydrogen supply chains, or they can also be used for multi-criterion decision support. However, the question we want to answer are falling in both categories at the scale of a territory, because we, at the same time, want to optimize the investments in the different assets, but we also want to be sure that the system we will develop will be able to operate. So to take into account the different spatial scale, the methodology we developed includes a B-level modeling. So first, we ran a prediction cost model at national scale, so in our case, at French scale, with fixed capacities that would allow us to obtain the grid electricity prices and emission factors, which are determinant parameters for the local capacity expansion and operation model we ran in second stage. So the second optimization model is at the scale of our local territory of interest, in our case, Fos-sur-Mer, and we seek to optimize the capacity and the operation of the system. So here you can see the model architectures. So we have in the square boxes the different resources of the model, such as natural gas, biogas, electricity, of course, and hydrogen. These different resources can be converted through conversion technologies that are represented here by the arrows, and they can also be stored by by the right storage technology represented here by the hexagons. In the study I will present later, I used the simplified modeling. So without taking into account the power purchase agreement for the to feed the local electricity network, and it's not possible also to inject from the local electricity network into the national grid. For hydrogen, we don't consider, we consider it, but the local hydrogen network has no connection with the national grid network that doesn't exist to date. And we also don't consider the ESMR technology. The parameters of the model can be categorized in two types. So the one related to the operation of the system that are defined with the operation period resolution, typically an hour. For example, the energy demand of the territory or the technical availability of the different technologies. And some other parameters are defined with the planning period resolution, and they are related to the investment in the different assets. For example, the economic data of the technology, the CapEx and the OpEx of the different technologies, or also the carbon tax that is applied in the modeling. The output data can also be categorized in the same two categories. So in the end, what we are really interested in are the capacities of the technology, the total cost of the system, the environmental impact of our system, and also how the system will be able to operate. In our example, we have a 30 years horizon planning from 2020 to the target year 2050. We have 4 different optimized operation year for which we want to verify the operation of the system. And during 2 operation year, we consider that this is the same, like we have 10 times the same operation year. We also have a 4 planning period of 10 years each, and the economic parameters are taken at the middle of the period. So to optimize the investment and the operation of the system, we use purely linear optimization. The objective is to minimize the total cost of the system, and these costs are divided in 3 categories. The operation and the capacity costs that are defined at the planning period resolution, and the variable costs that are defined at the operation period resolution. The decision variable are the capacity invested in the different conversion and storage technologies, the instant power of each technology, as well as the capacity of interconnection with outside of the territory, for hydrogen and electricity especially. All costs are actualized from the middle of the period compared to year 0. In our case, year 0 is 2010 year, to take into account what happened between 2010 and 2020, and that will allow us to take into account what is already existing on the territory of interest. The variable costs are defined with the hourly time step resolution. So our operation period is the hourly time step, and they include imports, network costs, and carbon costs, as well as the variable cost of functionment, the variable cost of operation of the technologies. The capacity costs are annualized regarding the length life of the technology. And we can see that the operation costs are proportional to the total power of the total capacity of the technology at year Y, while the capacity costs are proportional to the total invested capacity. And the 2 values are different because in our model, we let the possibility to decommission the technologies before the end of their lifetime. So if a technology is not used enough to be profitable, then it is possible to get rid of it to save the operation cost, but we still have to pay the investment of this technology till the end of its lifetime. And we also include the possibility to transform a technology from 1 year of the planning to another. And I will explain how it works to you now. So if we take the example of the conventional steam methane reformer, which are the existing capacity on the territory we are interested in, we can see that CO2 emissions are taking place at two different steps of the process. So there are CO2 on the process and CO2 to heat the gas before the reaction. And it is possible to add carbon capture units to this two different steps of the process. So it is possible to invest first in only one carbon capture unit, and the technology will evolve to like conventional steam methane reforming to steam methane reforming with carbon capture. And it is also possible to invest in two different carbon capture units. It is also possible, as I said before, to decommission the existing assets to save the operation costs. Another feature we added in the model is the detailed modeling of the network cost, especially the electricity network cost. So in our local area, the electricity can come from two different sources. First, it is possible to deploy local renewable electricity production capacities that are considered to be directly connected to the electrolyzers. And in that case, we don't have to pay the network cost, but the electricity can also come from the electricity market. We can buy electricity on the market at market price. And in that case, we have to pay the electricity network transmission costs. And this cost is representing the investment that has to be made to improve the grid to accept the connecting of the electrolysis. So to sum up, the different contribution we made to the literature with this model are the consistency between the global scale and the local scale by the B-level modeling, the different the possibility to have different electricity sourcing, which is rare in a capacity extension model, the transformation of the existing asset and the possibility to decommission the assets, and also the fact that we kept an hourly resolution for the operation with a large horizon planning. Here are the main economic parameters. I can come back to this later if you're interested in it, but I want to draw your attention especially on electrolysis capex that are decreasing. So this decrease corresponds to a learning rate of 18% with a hypothesis of cumulative installed capacity of 1 terawatt in 2050. These are the IRENA hypothesis. And I want also to draw your attention on the carbon tax that is increasing and that we took into account in the model. So now I will present you the key result we were able to obtain for the Fos-Rumer area study. So here are the result I obtained for the reference scenario. The reference scenario is the one with the economic parameters I presented before. So on the left here, you can see the optimized installed capacity on the territory and their evolution year by year. And on the right, you can see the total hydrogen production by technology. So we can point out three things. First, electrolysis is operational from 2040 only. When, if you remember, when I talked about the project, all the projects are due to 2030. So this is mainly due to the Europe initiative that are helping the project to develop and the subsidies that are possible for hydrogen production projects. We can see that the upper bound is reached for renewables, like dedicated renewable in the last period. However, if we look at the hydrogen production, this still represents a small part of the hydrogen that can be produced with directly connected electricity, renewable electricity production assets. And we can also be surprised by the fact that new steam methane reformers are invested and still used in the last period. And it's not a small proportion because it represents almost 50% of hydrogen production in the last period. So if we look in detail in the hydrogen production for a year during the operation period, during the last operation period, so the graph we can see on the left. So SMR production is complementary with electrolysis, but with almost a 50-50 repartition. If we look a little bit more in detail of electricity production, we can see that like the blue bars are happening when there is not a lot of wind, for example. And if we look at the hydrogen production cost, the graph on the right, we can see that the hydrogen produced by steam methane reforming with and without carbon capture, it's all included in the orange bar. The hydrogen, so the SMR production cost looks like is almost €1 per kilogram more expensive than electrolysis. And so we can question how it is possible to have a 50-50 repartition when the hydrogen is supposed to be more expensive when produced by SMR. So we can make the assumption that the SMR are providing a service to the system, and that's why it's interesting to keep them. So a question arises, which is, would electrolysis be more expensive without the SMR technologies in the system? So to answer this question, I calculated 3 different variants with an interdiction to use the SMR technologies. So the ban can be from 2030, 2040, or 2050. And you can see on the graph on the left, the average cost per year as a function of CO2 emission for all these scenarios. So we can see that with steam methane reformer technologies in the model, the costs are significantly lower than without the SMR technologies. But we can also see that the production is more CO2 emitting in that case. So we were able to define what we call SMR hybridization value, which is the cost difference between the reference scenario where there is no limit on the SMR capacity and the scenario where SMR are completely banned, which is the ban on SMR from 2030 scenario. And we found that the SMR hybridization value is at €0.74 per kilogram, which represents 32% of the cost. So that's quite a big amount. I also want to draw your attention on the fact that the final production emissions are below the low carbon European threshold in the reference scenario. But still, it is possible with the ban on SMR from 2030 scenario to decrease significantly the total cumulated carbon emissions. And we can save almost like more than 14 million tons of CO2 if we decide to not use SMR from the 2030. So we can really question if the society is willing to pay a little bit more to have the fastest decrease of CO2 emission. Now, I want to present the different factors that are influencing the optimal production mix, and more to answer these 2 questions. So what is the role of electrolysis? Because we can see that in our reference scenario, we are quite pessimistic about the electrolysis deployment. And what can be the role of carbon capture in our system? And how these roles are evolving when we vary the most important parameters of the study, such as electrolysis capex, the natural gas prices, or the CO2 post-treatment price once we captured it with the carbon capture units. So first, I will talk about the factors that are in favor of electrolyzers, and what first come to mind when we talk about the factor in favor of electrolysis. Then obviously, it is the electrolysis capex. And we can see that you can see here at the bottom the comparison between a learning rate of 10% and a learning rate of 28%. And of course, if the learning rate is higher, then the capex decreasing faster, and we can see a faster deployment of electrolysis. So I want to mention that the subsidize can start a virtuous cycle, because the subsidy can help to decrease the capex. That will increase the learning rate, and then this learning rate, this increase in the learning rate will also decrease the capex, and this will be a virtuous cycle. But some other parameters can also, that are not directly connected to the technology, can also be in favor of the electrolysis. For example, the renewable potential of the area, the presence of geological storage close to the hydrogen production sites, or the natural gas prices. We can see that the combination of unlimited renewable potential and geological storage can lead to more than 80% of hydrogen produced by electrolysis in the last period. But we can still mention that a small part is produced by SMR as peak production means. So there's still an interest, even in the most favorable case, to keep some SMR technology. So now I want to look at the factor that can limit the deployment of carbon capture. So the carbon capture is not optimal if the weighted average cost of capital is above 7%. So we can see here that we don't have blue bars at all. And if the natural gas price is going above 60 euro per megawatt. Obviously, if the CO2 treatment price is expensive, then the carbon capture becomes less interesting. So we can see that for above 100, like above 40 euro per ton of captured CO2, then we don't have carbon capture anymore. And I didn't talk about it yet, but if we have access to cheap hydrogen importation below 3 euro per megawatt, then we don't have carbon capture, and we don't even have SMR capacities anymore. So to sum up all this analysis, we can say that the parameters that are in favor of more gray hydrogen production, so conventional SMR hydrogen production, are a high weighted average cost of capital, an expensive CO2 treatment cost for the capture, and the possibility to have cheap hydrogen imports available. The factors that are more in favor of the deployment of blue hydrogen, so hydrogen produced by SMR with carbon capture, are the cheap CO2 treatment price, the cheap biomethane, cheap natural gas, and also slow decrease of electrolysis capex are in favor of blue hydrogen. And the factors that are in favor of electrolysis development are the fast decrease of electrolysis capex, of course, but also the high renewable potential of the area, the possibility to have a geological storage close, and also if the natural gas is especially expensive. As the evolution of these different parameters is unknown, and our anticipation of the future will differ from what will really happen, we saw that in the precedent analysis, changing the parameter even a little bit can lead to a very different optimal production mix. And in the end, what we really want to know is how resilient our different our energy system will be facing some unpredicted event. And what would be the difference between the modeling and the reality. So to test this, we first solved the local capacity expansion on operation model to optimize the capacities with a perfect knowing of the future, then this will allow us to obtain the perfectly optimized capacities. And then we will run a second time the model with fixed capacities. And this time we will run only the local operation model to have the operation, the optimal operation of the system with non-optimized production capacities. For example, we want to see, we have the reference scenario, we have our optimized capacity, but what if if natural gas is more expensive than what we anticipated? What if there is a ban on steam methane reforming from 2030, and how our system can adapt to this event? So in this study, we have 8 different anticipated scenarios, and we confront them to 8 possible evolution of the future. For example, I take my reference scenario. The levelized cost of hydrogen production is around 2.3 euro per kilograms under the total period. If the biomethane is cheaper than when we anticipated, then we are lucky. The total cost of hydrogen is decreasing. However, if the renewable are a little bit more expensive, then it doesn't change anything because, as I said before, there is not a lot of renewable capacity in the reference scenario, and so on and so on. So the more we go with bright color, the more expensive hydrogen becomes, and the more we stay with the dark color, the less expensive hydrogen is. So we do this for all our scenario. If we follow a line, the capacities are fixed, and if we follow a column, then the economic context and the events that will happen in the future are the same. That being said, we can see that the most impactful event, if they are not anticipated, are the expensive natural gas scenario and the ban on SMR from 2040 scenario. And the cheapest configuration, if we have access to cheap hydrogen importation. However, it is obvious that to base the development of our system on the possibility to have cheap hydrogen importation is very risky. So I wouldn't recommend it. We can point out 3 no regret scenarios that are all in favor of electrolysis deployment. They are not the cheapest in all cases scenario, but whatever happen in the future, the hydrogen will stay under control. I mean, the cost will stay under control. So these are the expensive carbon treatment scenario, the unlimited renewable potential scenario, and the expensive natural gas scenario. They are all scenarios in favor of the deployment of electrolysis. Especially the unlimited renewable potential scenario, especially, is the most interesting one out of all the scenarios we tested. However, we see there that if we don't have space to deploy dedicated renewable hydrogen production, then this scenario is not possible. So what we want to do is, in case we are in a constrained area, is that we want to develop the hydrogen further away. But in that case, the trade-off has to be made between the transporting the hydrogen, so transporting the hydrogen or transporting the electricity. So if we have the renewable plant at a different place than the consumption site, we can choose to install the electrolysis close to the hydrogen production or close to the hydrogen or close to the renewable electricity production. So to test this trade-off, to evaluate the impact of the network cost, I designed a simplified case study with 2 zones. So the industrial zone where there is the hydrogen consumption, and the renewable zone where the potential to install renewable electricity production is big. And the two zones are distant of 150 kilometers. And I compare 4 different configurations. The first configuration where everything is in the consumption zone. The second configuration when we have our consumption zone with electrolyzers close to hydrogen consumption, but the the renewable electricity production assets are further away and we transport the electricity. The third configuration where the electrolyzers is close to the renewable electricity production, then we have to transport the hydrogen. And a fourth configuration, which is the same as the third configuration, but we have also the possibility to store hydrogen in a geological storage. The results show that up to 150 kilometers, it is more interesting to transport hydrogen, and above it is more interesting to transport the electricity. However, we can see that for 150 kilometers, with all the parameters we have taken, there is no big difference in the levelized cost of hydrogen. We noticed that the transmission cost accounts for 7 to 16% of the total hydrogen cost, and they are not to be overlooked. And we can also point out that if geological storage is present close to hydrogen production, then the trade-off distance between the two zones is pushed up to 250 kilometers. So it become like transporting the hydrogen become more interesting for longer distance. I will now arrive to the end of my presentation. So the main result we were able to obtain in this work is first the development of a bi-level multi-resource integrated capacity expansion and operation model that can give us a lot of insightful results about the deployment of hydrogen in industrial ecosystem context. The analysis of the evolution of the hydrogen ecosystem of the industrial cluster of Fos-sur-Mer gives us the possibility to produce hydrogen at around 2.3 euro per kilograms for the 2020 to 2060 period. We showed the importance of the subsidies for a rapid development of electrolysis. And we showed that an optimal combination of electrolysis and steam methane reforming are helping to decrease the hydrogen production price. And we found an hybridization value at 0.74 euro per kilogram of hydrogen. Last, we showed that the optimal deployment of the hydrogen production mix is to, in parallel, develop dedicated renewable capacities to power the electrolyzers. We also showed that the investment in electrolysis are more robust than the investment in steam methane reforming capacities or importation infrastructure. And finally, we showed that transporting the hydrogen transportation is preferred to electricity transportation below 150 kilometers. Here are a few perspectives of this work. So a better modeling of the electricity prices and especially interconnection is needed. So we actually are already working on this topic. And a multi-node version of the model would allow us to have a better understanding of hydrogen transportation. And for example, the last study I presented, we could directly optimize the investment in different hydrogen transportation technology could be included in the optimization. robust or stochastic modeling could also be interested in this work because there is, of course, a lot of limit in taking only 1 year of weather data. We also thought about including the demand in the optimization. So not taking about hydrogen demand, but talking about steel demand and have emission associated to steel production and to include whether hydrogen is relevant or not to produce the steel into the optimization. And a life cycle approach for all environmental impact could be also very interesting in this kind of modeling. And last, we thought about making this the proposed method more systematic and automatic for a large number of territories, because of course I presented one case study, but it is possible to have a lot of to adapt the model to very different territory. So the presented work led to a publication in the Journal of Clean Air Production, to an oral presentation at the ISGT Europe conference last October. And in addition, I had the honor to win the second prize at the Prix Pierre Lafitte 2022. And finally, I also had the opportunity to be part of the team for the Monaco Boat Energy Challenge in 2021, 2022, and we can discuss this after the defense if you want to. Thank you for your attention, and of course, thank you for coming, and any question are welcomed.
Presentation of your research. I think now it's time to start the discussion of your results with first Professor Catherine Azaro-Pantel from Petrouse. Professor Azaro-Pantel.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. President. So first of all, I would like to thank my colleagues, Robin and Pedro, for the kind invitation to this PhD defense. So thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here, even remotely. So I want to warmly congratulate you, Anaël, for all your work, and first for your manuscript, which was very synthetic, and it's not so common for PhD students to have a maturity to present their work in such a synthetic way. So congratulations for that. And also congratulations for the nice presentation today, which I found very, very nice, which was very, I think, pedagogical. And also you presented your work in a complementary way to the style that was adopted in the manuscript. So congratulations. So after that, of course, we are going to discuss some points, and I will also focus on specific points of your manuscript and also on your presentation. So perhaps I'm going to follow the outline of your presentation, and also the content of your manuscript, if it's okay for you. So I think the context was, as I said, very synthetic. So it gives us the specific context of hydrogen and all the challenges that we are facing today for the deployment of such vector. And concerning the literature review that you performed, you focused your literature review on energy system modeling on one review, So why this specific choice? I assume that you, of course, you revised a lot of paper. So why this specific choice on? Was it too synthetic that there was only this this paper?
So yes, I've read a lot of different paper about capacity expansion model, and in a lot of paper, it is quite hard to have the detailed modeling, all the equation, and this work was particularly detailed, and the model was the most generic out of all the paper I've read. So that's why I choose to base my modeling on this specific work of Sheila Samsatli.
Okay. So you divide as it is divided in the paper. So there is a distinction between three kinds of model, and then you adopted this this approach, which in fact is quite classical. MILP approaches are the ones that are predominant in such then you have a section about hydrogen demand modeling, and according to me, as you presented it, it's more hydrogen use oriented than a specific section on the way you model the demand. When you present it, I expected the demand as, for instance, price dependent and so on. So for you, what is exactly, what do you mean by modeling hydrogen demand? Since in your case, it's just the evaluation of the amount of hydrogen. And
yes. So yes. So it was a big question at the beginning of the thesis, how we should model the hydrogen demand. Because the model is of course data driven by the demand, and so this has an impact on the result. And at first I've done some sensitivity analysis about the amount of the hydrogen demand, but so this work wasn't like very so I didn't present it here, and it's not in the manuscript, but it was showing that the amount of the demand didn't have a big impact on the results. And so actually my modeling of the demand is as you said, only the estimation of the needs of the basin, and I based my reflection on discussion I had with industrial in that basin, and that's why in the end I took these values. But it would be really interesting to include really in the modeling to include in the optimization the use of hydrogen, and not only to have I need that amount of hydrogen and that's it. And moreover, I took base load consumption for hydrogen because I focused on industrial uses, and I didn't talk about hydrogen for mobility, for which the load of the demand wouldn't be so flat, for example.
And
we can ask this question.
Okay, I think that the choice of hydrogen use for industrial applications is, of course, perfectly relevant due to the amount of hydrogen in demand in that case. But would it make it different in your model if you have included the demand for the hydrogen demand for mobility? I mean, perhaps the distribution, the final distribution step will be different, or perhaps also the way you condition the hydrogen. What do you think about this? Would it change something in your model?
Yes, I mean, it would definitely change something in the modeling part, because here my work only focus on hydrogen production, and I included the storage, but large scale storage, not storage at the consumption side, and I didn't included the distribution, the final distribution of hydrogen to the consumer. So this would, of course, be really interesting to take into account. However, I don't think, I can't be sure, but I don't think this would change the production mix, the hydrogen production mix in the basin.
Okay. But perhaps it will involve more complexity in your model.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, definitely, especially if we take into account the deployment of hydrogen refueling station for vehicle fleet and things like that.
Okay.
It is a really interesting subject, and I've read about this in the literature, but yeah, I didn't have time to include it in my modeling, even if I wanted to at first.
What I greatly appreciated in your work is that your scientific objective at the beginning was to reconcile, in fact, various scales, not only spatial scales, but also temporal scales. And I think that was very, very challenging, but I think you did it efficiently. And you mentioned in your manuscript that data was challenging. You have a large amount of data, both at spatial and also at temporal scales, in addition to the economic aspects and so on. You mentioned that the large amount of data was challenging, but was it the large amount, but also the scarcity of the data? How do you manage this complexity? You have to read, I assume, some prospective guidelines for hydrogen deployment. So how do you manage the scarcity of some data that I think that occur in your model input?
Yes, it was really a big challenge sometimes to find all the technological data, and that's why, like, one of the data I needed the most was the electricity prices at the hourly resolution for the distant future, and this data especially was really difficult to find. So that's why I decided to model it myself, because I wasn't able to find information elsewhere. And I've found a lot of economic data in the ADEME studies or in the RTE studies at the scale of France or at the scale of Europe. For some other for other data. Sorry.
Sorry, it's difficult remotely. In fact, in your manuscript, you mentioned some data inside the manuscript, but there is you didn't present some appendix with some appendices with the data that you used. So was it for confidentiality reasons?
No, actually, in the final version of the manuscript, I want to include a link to the project, to the informatic project, to the Git repository, where you can have access to all of the data that I use in the modeling. So that's why in the manuscript I only presented the important one, the one that have an impact on the results.
Okay.
But for most of the economic data, I took them from the literature. So I made a big synthesis of all the figures I could find in the different paper I read, and I tried to take them one that seemed the most relevant.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice, but I think it will be also interesting to have all the information. About the model, you developed your own model, so it's quite it's a huge task to develop a model. And I think the way you present the equation and so on, I think it's quite nice to. It's not an easy task, but I think that's well presented in your manuscript and also in your presentation. But what about the choices you made related to the environment of the model, Pyomo, for instance, and also the solvers that you used? You say that I think that the choices you made perhaps will need more justifications compared to the existing literature and so on. So
okay. So yeah, I wanted the model to be. I wanted to share it. So I had to choose. I wanted to choose a free solver and a free library to develop the model. And so there are a lot of how can I say expensive tools used in the literature. To be honest, I didn't question a lot the use of the Pyomo library, but it has the big advantage to be really understandable. If someone else is taking up my model, then the way it is written in Pyomo library of Python, you can really see the equations. So there is nothing that is hidden behind the computational layers.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice, and but perhaps there are some. You explained, I think, some reasons why you have chosen it now. It's for instance, in our team, we previously used GAMS, and now we are using Pyomo for perhaps reasons of interconnection with over software tools. But for also for the choice of the solver, but I think of course the choices you made are also good, of course.
We are considering LinoPy now instead of Pyomo.
Okay.
So we're also looking into that.
And I was surprised that you didn't mention the computational time with such problems with the difference in temporal scales. For instance, with the you discretized at the hourly. So it's not so easy, I think, from an optimization viewpoint. And you didn't mention, perhaps I missed something. You didn't mention for an instance of a problem the computational time.
Yes. So as explained, I have like two level. So the optimization is running twice for one occurrence of the model, and each optimization is taking 4 to 5 minutes to run, which is really fast. In that case, but in my studies, like in the calculation I run for this work, I only had one node, one special node, each time I ran the optimization. And what was planned at first was to have a multi-node version of the model with 2 or 3 or more nodes. And I think it would increase the computational time really fastly.
Okay. So in addition to the computational time, it will be to see the complexity, to highlight the complexity of your problem. It will also be nice to have the number of
Variables.
and also continuous variables that are involved in your synthesis. But all. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So about the I will go now perhaps more in the application. You mentioned the discount rate, and you use a method as the weighted average capital cost to estimate the discount rate, right? Is it okay?
No, I considered that the discount rate was equal to the weighted average cost of capital. Yes.
Okay, so you just in fact adopt a constant value for this discount rate.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can I go on with all the questions? It's okay. I didn't mention the time. Yeah, Mr. President.
No, you can.
Okay. About the, I found that in your model, you mentioned decommissioning constraints. I find it interesting, but in fact, I didn't see how you implemented this in your model, and in the results, does this in fact take place in the optimization?
Yes. So I have access to this data. I didn't focus any analysis on it, so I don't know like from memory that how much is discard in what scenario. But I have access to how much is decommissioned before the end of its lifetime. And this was quite a challenge, actually, in the modeling part, to be able to remove some technology before the end of the lifetime. And to do so, what I did was first to, if I have investment choice, for example, in 2020, and the lifetime of the technology is 20 years, I know that what I have invested in 2020 should be removed at the later in 2040. So what I do is in my constraint, I test first is the final year of my technology is reached or not, and if it's not, I have the possibility to remove the capacity of the total available capacity for the operation, but it's not completely removed of the model. So it is stored in another value. I have like 2 different value. It's not, I'm sorry, it's a bit confusing. So yeah, the total operating capacity is different of the total capacity of a technology in the modeling. And I keep the 2 value, and that's why I'm able to consider this case.
Okay.
I don't know if this answers your question. Sorry.
Okay. Regarding the technologies that you selected, why not considering PEM? You mentioned this, I don't remember the section, but you say that, I don't remember where is the, but you mentioned that you didn't consider PEM. I don't understand why. In fact, was it too? What's the complexity? In fact, it's a techno-economic model, so you only have to change the
Yes.
value. So why is
exactly. So first, I considered it in my first studies, and the PEM technology is more expensive than the alkaline technology.
Yeah.
And so it's also smaller, but the footprint area is not considered in the modeling. It would be an interesting parameter to include, but it is not included for now. So actually, the PEM electrolyzers don't have any advantage on the alkaline electrolyzers. The way I model the function, the electrolysis functionment. So it wasn't used. It was in the model, but it was more expensive, so it wasn't used because all the constraints I implemented, none of them were in favor of the PEM electrolysis. So that's why I just removed it, because it was just confusing to keeping it and not use it.
Okay, and in the same way, why not considering? Perhaps I'm wrong. Why not considering PPA in your? You mentioned this as in the
yes.
in your presentation. You say we didn't consider.
Yes. And actually, in the last study, I had the possibility to have PPA. But if I take my architecture, so I in the model I coded in Pyomo the possibility to have PPA.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
but for the study in Fos-sur-Mer, one of the challenge was what to analyze, because we have so many results and all the different parameters influence each other. So if first I took into consideration PPA, but I had some trouble identifying what was the impact of each parameters on the result. And so in the end, it was in order to simplify the analysis.
Yes, but this option will be in favor of the electrolysis.
Of more electrolysis, yes. It would
perhaps
be
approach is penalizing in that way, no?
Yes. So that's why in the last studies with the simplified study with the two zone, I could take into account the power purchase agreement. But one of the questions about the power purchase agreement was also to define, okay, we can buy electricity at fixed price, but at what price? And it added some complexity in the, how can I say, the economic modeling.
Okay. In your result, so you mentioned several times, in fact, the importance of SMR with CCS to in fact to reduce the VLCOH. So and
Yes.
in the results. In fact, I don't remember, perhaps it's in slides, slide 36 or and following, perhaps. You mentioned, and I was surprised of the transition. I mean, electrolysis only occurs after, perhaps this one in former, no, when there is a transition, perhaps in that case, in fact, electrolysis only occurs in the last periods. So in order to have, I assume, a mature technology to guarantee the scale up of electrolysis. But in fact, so the transition is very abrupt, I think.
Yes, I agree with you that the transition can be really can happen really fast, and but in this in all my analysis, I don't take into account any subsidy or any facilitating factors. So these are the results. If we don't do anything, what could be the optimal investment trajectory? So of course, this will be different from the reality, because like a lot of money can be injected to help this transition to be faster.
Okay. So, but in your, that was
sorry, Professor Pante.
Okay.
Maybe a last question, if you don't
mind.
Okay.
So, but my last question, perhaps, to sum up all your results. You mentioned, I think what is very important in your model, but the way you implement it is very generic, so you can adapt it to other case studies. So according to you, was it the results you obtained with this kind of behavior? Is it quite dependent on the case study, on the applications with only industrial applications, or what is your opinion in that way?
So yeah, the model can be adapted to a very different territory with a different energy demand and different geographical constraints. And I think some of the results can be reproducible on a very different territory. I think that the fact that the SMR are complementary with electrolysis and helping the hydrogen system is a fact that will stay true everywhere. So of course, the production mix will be different with a different territory. But about the demand, I'm not so sure that the result would be very different in another context than the industrial context, because what is good about hydrogen, what we all like about hydrogen, is that we can store it. And if we can store it, then the demand profile don't have such a big impact on the production mix, in my opinion.
Okay. So thank you for all your work, Anaël, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Catherine Lazaro-Pante. We now move on to the next rapporteur, as we say in French, so referee. The second report will be provided by Professor Magnus Korpas from NTNU in Norway. Professor Korpas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President of the committee, and thanks for everyone involved for inviting me. It was a pleasure to read the thesis, and especially nice to hear the presentation about the work, which was very comprehensive and still dense. So we managed to go through all the major parts of your work, and that's a quite big amount of work with perfect timing. So congratulations with the great presentation of the work. And also thanks to Catherine for opening up with good questions and relevant questions. I will continue with some more. It was, as I said, an interesting read, good work, and I would. But of course, there are some questions that I do have, which we might discuss. So let's get to it. First of all, I would ask a clarification question regarding one of the figures just to clear that out of the way, because I wasn't sure in chapter 6. It's figure 6.2. You might have that in the presentation as well. Let me see. It was about the coloring.
Yes. I know what you mean.
Yeah. See, so is the shading of the colors there regarding wind via the grid and wind direct connection, is that the opposite? It's not. It's the figure 6.2 in the report.
Okay, I may. I know I don't have it.
Okay, but then yeah. Okay, so
okay.
So just
I did.
Yeah.
I did verify when I saw your comment on the report, and they are the right colors, and
okay.
So the dark color are the wind and the renewable capacities in direct connection with the electrolyzers. So they are the ones that are close to the electrolyzers, and in that case, in the consumption zone. So that's why the proportion is very small, because we don't have a lot of space in the consumption zone to install renewable capacities. And the light ones, they are the ones that are installed further away, and with the power purchase agreement are coming through the grid to the electrolyzers.
Okay, but
so I think the colors are right.
Yeah. So in the table 6.1, scenario 2 refers to the case where renewables can be installed in the industrial area and the regional area. That is scenario 2. So, but in scenario 2, you see in this figure that most of the wind goes via the grid, while in scenario 3, it says that in the table that all renewables are in the regional zone, and then but then all the wind is connected via direct connection.
Yes, because in scenario 3, the electrolyzers they are in the renewable zone, so we can connect the electrolyzer directly to wind and solar.
Okay, so it's direct connection to the electrolyzers outside the area, and then pipeline transport, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That was a nice clarification. Okay, but regarding grids, now you considered in this study that the grid is represented as a cost, not as a constraint, right? Do you consider grid constraints in this study, or only costs?
Okay, yes and no. So yes, we first obtained the cost, the grid cost, the grid electricity cost, but I also have a constraint on the subscribed power to the connection to the grid. If I can put the question. No, it's there. Here, the PS in the equations is the subscribed power to the electricity grid. And through this cost constraint here, I am able to optimize the connection capacity to the grid. So we have still a constraint.
Okay, so you do include grid investments in the model. Do you then consider grid investments in the model when you do the analysis in chapter 6?
It's not modeled as okay, we need a new line here, or we need a new transformation post here. But it is only considered through this TURP, which means in French tarif d'utilisation de réseau d'électricité, and which is the use of the electricity network, and this is including grid reinforcement and the building of new lines and everything. But I didn't model that. No.
Okay, because I was so some of our own previous work, we looked at the cases where there actually are grid constraints or long permission times, given constraints to what you actually can integrate, and then and then you use hydrogen storage and flexibility as an alternative to grid constraints, because it's not practical for some reason, or at least that is the case in Norway now. The grid is filled up, and if you want to connect something new now, it takes 15 years. But how? So the question is, can you? How do you think that these optimal combinations in chapter 6 would change if you had large limitations in the grid, and how would that affect the cost of hydrogen? It's a bit of imagination here, so I would just want to reflect a bit on that.
Yes, I think it can have a big impact. You're right. And so, of course, if the grid capacity is limited, then the result would be more in favor of the transportation of hydrogen, because we can directly connect. Okay, here. It would be more in favor of scenario 3, because we don't need a big grid connection here, because we can connect directly the electrolyzers to the renewable plant that is built nearby, and then transport the electricity. So actually, what would it mean to have a smaller grid capacity? It would mean that it would be translated in a higher cost to connect the electrolyzers in scenario 1 and 2, and so this will mean that the scenario 3 and 4 will become more interesting, I think.
Yes, I agree. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go to one of my favorite chapter, maybe the favorite chapter here, which is the sensitivity analysis. I want to reflect a bit on what you found there. So before, we can use this. So, did you consider to do a sensitivity analysis on the electricity import prices to France?
Yes. So I didn't do it for this specific analysis. What I did was okay. I can like have another slide to explain this better. Where is it? Okay, here.
This is a good graph.
Okay, so yeah, I did 3 different calculations with the importation of electricity at 50 euro, 150 euros and like 300 euros per megawatt hours, I think. And I choose the one that allowed me to be the closer to the real price of the year 2018. That was my reference for weather data. And then I didn't touch it, the interconnection price anymore. The reason I didn't do a sensitivity analysis on this was because in the lab, some other people are working on very better modeling of electricity prices with several nodes, including all Europe. And what I wanted to do was to interface my model with their model and to have a very much better estimation of electricity prices. And so that's why I didn't dig into that direction more. But you're right, it can have a big impact.
Because the price of natural gas has a big influence on the results in the sensitivity analysis.
Yes.
And presently the electricity price is highly correlated with the natural gas price. That might change in the future, right? But looking at your import prices for electricity, it seems that those prices are not driven by renewables or storage, probably some connection to natural gas price. So it would be interesting to see also how that level, just assumption, just reducing the level or increasing the level, how that will affect the investments of everything in the industrial and regional zone, or if it will just be a minor distortion of the results. So that could be an interesting follow-up. To just do one check. Yeah. Okay. But going back to what you did, because you did a lot of sensitivity analysis, and I support the choices that you made there. Although I would like to see one more. But if we look at this, so can you please just repeat what your main what you could mainly conclude with after this sensitivity analysis regarding investments under uncertainty in these different technologies?
So the question is, what is my main conclusion?
Yeah, but yeah, just from this separate, from this particular sensitivity analysis regarding what to invest in under uncertainty.
So the main conclusion of this analysis was that the investment in gas-based technology are more risky than the investment in electrolysis technology. And in my opinion, this is due to the fact that gas is external for us, because we don't have natural gas in France, and but the electrolysis is more controlled. I mean, the deployment of the technology is more controlled, and the deployment of the renewable capacities at the local scale are not dependent on exterior factors. And the second element I can give there is that we have a carbon tax in the model that is increasing across the different year of the planning. And so the gas-based technology, when we are penalizing them, for example, in the expensive natural gas scenario, then I can say that the gas technology are doubly penalized. That the penalty is doubled, because first we have the carbon tax and then we add something on this. While when we are D5, we have moving the parameters that are not in favor of electrolysis, then we have a backup solution, if I can say it like that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That was good to have repeated. And regarding the CCS technologies, you found out that it was 50% capture rate that was usually, now over your whole work, that was usually chosen by the model as the optimal case, and not 90%. Is that also correct in those cases where SMR is considered optimal?
Yes. The only case where I have a 90% rate capture is when I did a sensitivity analysis about the weighted average cost of capital. So I don't have the figure here,
but it's okay.
But in chapter 4, this is the only case where I can see my light blue coming to life. And maybe the hypothesis on the 90% carbon capture is a bit pessimist. Or maybe the carbon tax isn't expensive enough to allow the existence of carbon capture with a 80% rate.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I want to mention that for us, the captured CO2 is only a waste. We have to do something with it. We have to pay for it, and we have to treat it. And however, in some cases, this captured carbon can have a value, a market value, and this could completely change because, of course, with a 80% capture rate, we capture more CO2, and if we can valorize it, then maybe this technology can have more interest in that case.
Okay, good, thanks. And I have to ask one question, so maybe a bit out of scope, and I'm sorry for that, but I still have to ask it because I'm curious. So SMR is steam methane reforming, but SMR is also abbreviation for small modular reactors, nuclear reactors. And this is an industrial site where we have electricity demand and a growing demand for base load hydrogen production. Now, do you consider that type of SMR as an option for this particular site? And if not, why not? Just out of curiosity.
We could. I mean, everything is implemented in the code so that we can do this. I didn't consider it because I didn't look for the technical economic information about the small modular reactors. But we can, like in all the dark green, the electrolysis grid feed is actually containing nuclear electricity. This is green, but this is not like renewable hydrogen, purely renewable hydrogen. This is considering grid electricity, and in France, grid electricity is nuclear. So
yeah, because I saw the marginal cost level there. That probably
yes.
Okay, but thank you. That's it. I just then have finally one more question before leaving the room to the next committee member, and that is about your SMR, the steam methane reforming in chapter 5, where you calculate the cost of avoided CO2, where you calculate that by comparing a reference scenario with a non-SMR scenario. But I'm just wondering, does this CO2 abatement cost, will that be completely correct since you already have a CO2 tax in the objective function? So should you
yes.
also have done a study where you just remove the CO2 tax and then do the same comparison, or?
Yes, I totally agree with your comment, and I think the cost that I've written in the manuscript of 32 euros per ton of CO2 of released CO2 is not. I should rethink the way I
It's the
calculated
additional, yeah. So it's the additional
Yes,
cost
it's additional
of
to the
CO2,
carbon capture, which is already 165 euro per ton of CO2. You're right.
Yeah.
Totally right.
Okay, it's just that it's an additional. Okay, but thank you a lot for answering all my question, and I think can leave the room for next member.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Corpas. We now move on to a different angle by asking Professor Crillon from CIRED to provide a comment on the thesis. And as we now start with a comment, sorry, just a quick element. As we now start just different aspects, we have had two views from the rapporteur, and now we start with the examiner. I will maybe ask the examiner to provide the question in bulk, if you're ready to take them in bulk,
yes,
in batches, and then to ask you to for the sake of time.
Okay.
Thanks. Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thanks, Robin, for inviting me. I was very happy to discuss this work for the second time, actually. And as I said the first time, it's a really useful modeling exercise with a nice application. And I especially like the section 4.2 on the stress tests, which an exercise which I think is not done very often, and while it's really useful and well done in this case. I also appreciate the representation of energy networks and the possibility, the modeling of the transformation of existing assets. I'll start by a few remarks, and then I will turn into a series of questions. And Olivier, don't hesitate to stop me if it's getting too long.
Okay.
So for the remarks, I agree with the previous speakers that the manuscript is really well written and synthetic. It's even understandable for an economist like me, so congratulations. Yeah, because I'm an economist, I'm not in engineering sciences. I just regret that I have to say there are many typos. So I really advise you to correct them before putting the thesis online. So one remark and that I'd like to have to make also is that it was not clear to me at the beginning how that, in fact, for the national optimization, you only optimize dispatch, and while you optimize both investment and dispatch for the local optimization. It's clearly explained, but it could be explained earlier on. It was clear only in section 231 and especially 3.3. But at the beginning in sections 2.2 and 2.1, 2.2, and if you go 2.1, this was not that clear to me. Also, I think you could have provided more discussion about some of the assumptions and some of the conclusions, especially as was mentioned by Catherine earlier. The justification to use a model by Shayla, Sansatley, and co-authors is not really explained. Another point is that you use the same discount rates for every technology, which is not a problem, but since we know from other works that the optimal system is really sensitive to the choice of to the differentiation of discount rates across technologies, and in real life they do differ because the risks also differ. This is something you could discuss. Also, you assume a fixed price for electricity imports, which would not be the case in real life, because especially renewable production would be correlated with neighboring countries. So I really clearly understand why you don't make another assumption, but you could add one or two sentences to explain what your intuition is about taking different assumptions. This was for the discussion on the assumptions, and concerning the conclusions. You provide a nice and really comprehensive sensitivity analysis in section 4.1, but you could compare the results with other such sensitivity analyses, like the one we did with Berang-Shirizadeh that in the paper that you cite. Also, I see in figure 4.6 that the share of electrolysis is stable if you increase the natural gas price above 70 euros. I imagine that it is because you reach the limit to deploy renewables and to import more electricity, but is it really the case, or is there another reason? This is a case in which you could discuss more your conclusions. Okay, this being said, I will turn to questions. Since I'm an economist, I start with the questions more linked to economics. You explain that your model can be applied both for private and a public optimization, which is nice. But in this particular application, I was not always fully, it was not always fully clear to me in which case you consider that you are. For the carbon tax, you don't take the values of climate action taken from the Kinner report, but lower values. Is it because you think of a private optimization and you think that these are more reasonable or more likely values, which is may well be the case, or is there another reason? But if it's a private optimization, then is it really the best choice to use the discount rate of 4% in the reference scenario? Because as you have written, a private investor would likely use a higher discount rate, even though in the current situation, we really don't know what the future discount rates will be. And a third sub-question is that in fact, in your modeling, there's not only one externality, the negative externalities from greenhouse gas emissions, but there is also the positive externality from learning by doing. And so, have you tried to quantify this positive externality? Because even though this externality will benefit mostly other world countries, because France is just a small part of the world economy, it could be important. Intuitively, it could be. Oh, so this was my first set of questions regarding the nature of the optimization. Is it private or public? And another question is a bit related to economics. is that you calculate the cost of dedicated solar or wind energy to produce hydrogen. Okay, but if you have a potential to deploy these renewable energies in the territory, shouldn't you take into account the opportunity cost of not using them to feed the electricity grid instead? Not locally, but for the national grid. I'm not sure this would change anything, but still, this is my question. My second question. And my third question is about the sensitivity analysis. As far as I understand, you apply it only to the local optimization, to the local model, and not to the national one. So admittedly, for the national model, you don't optimize investment, so this would not change the capacities, but still it would change, so at least for some of these parameters, would change the dispatch of the system, and then the prices, energy prices, and so on. So did you not do it because of computational constraints, or is there another reason? And then I still have two small questions. The first one is that, if I understand well, you don't take into account electricity exports and to neighboring countries, and I'm not sure to understand why. Since you model the interconnections, okay. And my last questions, because I had other questions, but you already addressed them before. Is that just a precision of the capacity factors, the hourly time series of capacity factors for wind and PV? Do you take the same ones for the national and local optimization, which is not the case, like, if I read figure 2.1 correctly, but I was not too sure, so I'd be interested in having this an answer to this. Okay, so this is all for me, and so I let you answer.
Okay, so first, thank you for all your remarks and questions. So I agree with your remarks that were very relevant. So thank you for the remarks. So for your first question, yes, I wanted to develop a model that is possible to use for private and public investors. In my study, it wasn't clearly stated, but I think that this is more for a public investment. And in this work, I mostly discuss with some public investors, for example, with people from the Région Sud in south of France. So that might have influenced me to be more in a public investment state of mind. And for example, I think I only considered one actor, which could be a region or a community, but I doubt that a private investor would invest at the same time in electrolysis and in SMR capacities, because there are different technologies and different work, I would say. So like for me, I'm more like in the public investment strategy. And the model, the computational model can be used for private actors by changing the constraints or the numbers of, or by adding constraints on, I don't know which technology they want to deploy or so on the scale of the project. But for me, I was more in the public use of the model. So yes, so that's also why I took a discount rate of 4%, because I agree that it would be more relevant to take a higher one for private companies. And we also considered to implement different discount rates for the different technology, because as you said, the risk is different. It is possible to implement it in the model as it is, but we didn't push the analysis until there. So it would be an interesting thing to look at, and how it can have impact the result. Now, but your question about the carbon tax. That's right. That I didn't take the one from the McKinsey report. I didn't really question the value. Okay. I didn't answer very well. Sorry. Sorry. So I don't. I had some scenario where I took a higher carbon tax. I didn't keep this for sensitivity analysis because the result wasn't very influenced by the value of the carbon tax in a deeper way. So yeah, I'm sorry that I can't explain any further why I choose this value. That was I think from a RTE report. And we didn't consider the positive externality of learning by doing. And actually, I'm not very comfortable with that kind of economic aspect. And so I didn't read a lot of literature about that. And that is probably not what I should say now, but it is another aspect of the problem, and I didn't consider it at all. But it would be very interesting, in my opinion. Okay. About your question about yes, the sensitivity analysis. For each case, for each analysis, I did at a local scale. I also did the analysis at national scale. So, for example, when the natural gas prices is changing at local scale, it is also changing at national scale. So the electricity grid prices are influenced in each sensitivity analysis by what is happening also at local scale. So yes, for each analysis, I did both. And also in line with this, the capacity factors at local and global scales are not the same. The capacity factor for the global scales are taken from observation. So I took the weather year of 2019, and I looked at how the system was operated in that year, and I obtained the capacity factor like this for the national scale. But for the local scale, I used an online simulator called Renewable Ninja or Ninja Renewables that is able to give different capacity factor correlated with where the technology are installed. So they are different, yes. And especially in south of France, close to Marseille, the wind capacity factor is a bit higher than when we talk the average value at scale of France. Okay, about the electricity explorations, I did consider electricity exportation to neighboring countries, but they weren't optimized. Actually, it was the result of a post-treatment of my price series. I don't remember why. Because at first I optimized the electricity exports and the electricity imports at national scale, and the results weren't satisfying, but I don't exactly remember why. And so in the end, I removed the electricity export and I considered them in a post-treatment to include them. And yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember why. And about the questions of using the local renewables to inject in the electricity network instead of to produce hydrogen, the question is very important. And so in my case, I didn't allow electricity injection to the grid, mainly because it was impacting the result a lot. Because as it is profitable to sell the electricity on the network, the total renewable capacity was like almost infinite. Actually, I think I had some cases where the code wouldn't stop running because there is no bound to the renewable capacity. And so this was introducing like a problem for the analysis after. So in the end, I just decided to not connect the renewable capacities to the grid. And it would be, of course, very interesting to know if it would be more interesting to produce the hydrogen. But to do that, I also have to sell the hydrogen because, of course, if I have the possibility to produce hydrogen or to sell the electricity to the grid, but I can't sell the hydrogen, then of course it would be more interesting to sell the electricity because it's more profitable. So I didn't include this in the modeling. And with this, I hope I could give some answer to all of your questions.
Thanks a lot for this very detailed and informed answers. That's all for me.
Thank you very much for your questions.
Very much, Philippe. I will now take the opportunity to present my own views on the comments. There's been already many comments, so I've had to make a selection of my questions, but I will try to follow up with Philippe, who has raised a series of questions regarding to accounts. So I will try probably maybe first to highlight a few clarification questions on the reason for your decision to model certain aspects of the model, and then I will maybe ask a few elements that are maybe an eco nature, because as Philippe said, I'm in the same position. I'm not an expert in chemical engineering. I will hope you will forgive me for that. So first of all, Thank you very much for your brilliant presentation. I think it was very clear that the presentation you gave. It was really insightful. It's an interesting opportunity for us to learn a lot on the way an industry transforms itself, and especially this opportunity to see how the evolution of hydrogen production technologies emerge and evolve over time. This is clearly a very interesting point, and to me, a good thesis is when it's like a candy box. When you read it, you have the opportunity to discover new things and to raise these many questions. So that's a very important aspect. To me, it's the very first time that we have an opportunity to model the decommissioning of SMRs and how this gradual decommissioning and the transformation of these SMRs is going to be done. It raises many opportunities for future research. So thank you for that. That said, there are plenty of questions that are raised by your question. You've decided to focus on a very specific case, the FOSS area. And historically, FOSS, as you know, has been a harbor, as you pointed out, that was raised that has grown from the transportation and of hydrocarbon, and especially for unloading the hydrocarbons that are processed either locally in the FOSS area, but also in broader region in the Rhône Valley, because you know there is a refinery in Feyzin that is also processing crude oil that has been unloaded in Fos-sur-Mer. So one of the questions that emerged from this remark, which is my first one, is about the geographical scope. You have decided to pick has a narrow scope around the FOSS area, whereas one could wonder about the presence of an interland, which is a bit broader. And if you consider a broader interland, all the questions pertaining to the scarcity of land for deploying renewables may be a little bit less relevant. So I'm wondering about the selection of this geographical scope, because some people in this audience have made some modeling for broader region for hydrogen, such as the work done by Professor Zarupantel on Occitania. So first question is on the geographical scope. My second question is on the technological scope. We are in École des Mines, but I've noticed that there is no nuclearocrat nor nuclear enthusiast in this room. Still in France, they are numerous, as you know. And you pointed out that your Fos-sur-Mer is about 130 kilometers away from Manosque, where you have the hydrogen storage facility that could be considered the underground storage. But it's also 130 kilometers away from Tricastin, the big nuclear power plant. And as you know, the nuclearocrats are very enthusiastic about the so-called solid oxide electrolysis that could be run at full speed all day long, by being connected to a source of a nuclear power station, and that also would benefit from the processing heat generated by nuclear generation. So I'm wondering why is that omission? Because then they could claim, nuclearocrats would claim, oh, there is some kind of bias in the selection of technologies. So that's important to address that from my perspective. That's my second question. Regarding the third question, I've noticed that you have an interest for infrastructures, because and I'm an economist focusing on infrastructure, so I'm really pleased about the discussion you've had with the inclusion of a network and how the possibility to transport hydrogen over a long distance could be a way of transporting energy. So that's a very interesting part. But still, there is one aspect of the infrastructure that is, to me, a bit neglected in the model, and I'm wondering why, is the CCS and the CO2 aspect. Of course, it's nice to capture carbon dioxide, but then we have this issue about transporting it to a site. I'm sure that you plan maybe to export it by boat to some areas. But from my understanding of this CO2 chain is that there is also economies of scale by doing these kind of activities. And as you have a network, you're considering a cluster here of industries that are also big emitters, refineries and so on. To some extent, I'm wondering whether by some kind of creating a big club of emitters that emit massively, it lowers the cost, and whether you have accounted these considerations when designing the cost of CCS. So question in short is, can we leverage on economies of scale on the deployment of these technologies? Yes or no? And is it something that you have omitted? And if yes, why? That would be a clarification question for me. My fourth question focuses on decommissioning. It's a very interesting aspect, as you're pointing out. Well, you have had an interesting representation of the way to decommission SMRs, so that's a very interesting aspect. To me, and I'm not blaming you because it's a very old literature, but there is a very old literature from the 50s and 60s coming from the engineering economic analysis, looking at how technological obsolescence creates an opportunity to have residual values for the technologies, and so as to foster the premature replacement of older technologies. So I cannot help thinking that there might be room, it's, as I was mentioning, the candy box, there is room for picking another candy bar here by looking at a way we could maybe further deepen into the question of how, technological progress creates some obsolescence and create opportunities for deploying more rapidly or not SMS or changing that. So that would be an element. So that my first question is on decommissioning. And last but final set of comments are related to policies. I cannot help thinking that there are the missing elephants in the room somehow here, because when we talk about hydrogen, it's an industry that is clearly driven by the big policy moves that you pointed out in the introduction, such as the European ambitions there and so on. So I'm wondering, there is a big debate nowadays about what can be labeled green hydrogen, and depending on whether it has to be produced by using electricity that has been generated simultaneously at the time when hydrogen is produced, or we can use maybe a bit looser constraints on that, and how this type of consideration might affect the results. Is it something that you have considered? That's the first element. And the second element is the fact that we are considering first, as I said, it was clearly the harbor where we had all the oil coming from the Middle East being unloaded. And we cannot help thinking that there is also a lot of people considering the possibility to substitute our dependency to oil to a dependency to hydrogen, and especially the guys in the Middle East clearly consider that. And if we, as importing states, develop hydrogen, it's also an opportunity for us to be independent, or at least to increase our sovereignty. I'm wondering if there can be some policy advices and policy recommendations that could be derived from your work regarding the need or the possibility to implement policies and curbing down the dependency towards imports. I have in mind an example drawn from the case of LNG in Spain. The reason why LNG in Spain and LNG terminals have been developed in Spain is because of a policy act enacted by the Spanish government aimed at fostering the deployment of alternative import sources other than Algeria, connected by pipeline. So here's the floor.
Okay. So thank you very much for all your interesting questions. So your first question about the geographical scope is actually linked to your last question about the possibility to export hydrogen or the derivative product from hydrogen to the rest of the world. So yeah, as I said in the perspective, at first I wanted to develop a broader model, including some nodes that could be, for example, in North America and or elsewhere in France. And this would have allowed us to take into account this kind of question and the place of Fostermer in a more European and even mondial context. And this are really interesting question, and it's really true that it is important, and I wanted to look into this at first.
I was just more simply, not on a global scale, but more on a meso scale, such as, for example, the Rhone Valley.
Ah, okay. Yes, this is also true. I didn't consider the rest of the Rhone Valley. What I did consider was the geological storage, which is a little bit further. But the hydrogen transportation question or the electricity transportation question would be the same if we talk about like Valence or Lyon cities. We have to model further away the infrastructure to take into consideration these zones. So at first, we wanted to go step by step in the development of the model, and so we at first we told ourselves, okay, we are going to focus on Fos-sur-Mer because it's close. We can go there, we can talk to people, and there are a lot of industry. This is nice way to start. And then we wanted to expand, but there were so many interesting questions only focusing on the Fos-sur-Mer area, so we didn't have time to expand further away, I think. About the technological scope, you talk about the SOFC technology. We could also talk about the methane cracking technology that we're also developing here in this our center. The reason behind the choice of not taking them into account was the technological and economic maturity, because this is economic optimization. I needed to have economic data about this technology. And even for the technology that we are developing here, I wasn't able to obtain any cost economic data about this technology, so I couldn't include them in the model. I did some analysis with them, and but I didn't know what to conclude with this analysis because there were so many uncertain parameters that it wasn't very relevant. About the CO2 consideration. So yes, the way I considered, so like in the previous question, at first I wanted to do so many things, and in the end I was constrained by the time and by how to have one work that is coherent. But I wanted to have more discussion about how we are taking into account the CO2 that is captured, what we do with this, should we build a CO2 network and to transport it, how much will it cost? And as you said, it is very possible that scale economy are possible by aggregating industrial companies. And like for me, I just took one number and I said, okay, so you have captured CO2, you have to pay this. And this could be discussed further away, of course. I think Robin has a subject, a PhD subject about the economy about the CO2. So there will be room for further work around this, of course. And another aspect about the CO2 is that I only considered the fugitive emission, methane emission, the fugitive hydrogen emission, and direct CO2 emissions. And of course, we could have a more life cycle approach to the CO2 emission, because I didn't consider the embodied emission for the technology. So that would be also interesting to consider. Okay, so you had a question about the decommissioning. I didn't read the question.
Maybe that wasn't a question, it was more a remark on the way the treatment of decommissioning. I was wondering whether
yes, of course. It could, yeah. There is room for improvement there also about how to consider the decommissioning. And for example, for me, the decommissioning just allow me to save the operation cost, the fixed operation cost. But I didn't consider how much would it cost to take down a plant, for example, and how much it would cost to remove all the waste and everything that is associated. And I didn't consider any residual value for the plant and what can we sell to someone else. So yes, it would be really interesting to look a little bit more further into this, and that there is room for improvement there. And your last question was about the policies. So yes, as you said, and as I mentioned in the presentation, the hydrogen economy is very driven by the policies and the subsidized and the political decisions. For me, I don't talk about green hydrogen not really in the presentation, because when I use the electricity from the grid, I don't differentiate if this electricity produced by renewable electricity on renewable capacity production or not. And everything is a little bit coming at the same time. For me, it is possible to have part of my electricity coming from the local solar panel at the same time as some electricity from the grid is coming to produce the same hydrogen. So there is a possibility in that kind of modeling to differentiate. And actually, if you want to sell the hydrogen, the green hydrogen, the labelized green hydrogen wouldn't be sold at the same price as the gray hydrogen or the blue hydrogen. So if we want to include this aspect, then we have to make the differentiation between how the electricity is produced. And for me, so if I use the electricity from the grid, as I have the hourly carbon content of the grid for each hour of my model, I am able to say, okay, this electricity is emitting that amount of CO2, and this is included in what I call the carbon content of hydrogen, which are the emission related to hydrogen production, and the electricity emission are counted into the hydrogen production emissions. But it could be modeled more in detail, and we could differentiate between that. But my opinion on that topic is also that green, like renewable hydrogen, shouldn't be pushed by decision maker as the best solution, because there are also other technologies that can have an interest and that can help to also decrease carbon emissions. And so this is not like renewable hydrogen against the rest of the world. There is a trade-off to be made between the different technologies. Okay. That would be for my answers. Thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you so much. So it's now time to move on to the Faris Elalouche. Sorry. This is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. So thank you, Anaël, for all the work. So just to give, I would say, a short story about the involvement of Air Liquide in this project. So we are involved actually in the work of Anaël since the beginning. So mainly actually a colleague, Robin Molinier, that I would like to thank and worked a lot with Anaël on this topic. And so we had weekly meetings. So the topic for me is not new, but actually reading the manuscript and the storyline with all the sequence, with the sensitivity analysis and so on is actually, it's not that it's new, but putting it together gives a new flavor to it, and it's very interesting. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for all the work. I mean, I will let Robin Pedro comment on this part, but it was also interesting for us to see the progression and all what it takes to do it on the field with all the problems that one can face in doing this kind of work. So I have mainly one, I would say, question / comment, which is really on the actually it's kind of related to what is discussed by Philippe Quirion and Olivier Massol on the private public sector, and the work here can be, I would say, to be focusing on a private view or a public view. So I would say my two small questions is that first, you had the opportunity to discuss with different parties. So what do you see as the main conversions and the main, I would say, differences in the way public actors and private actors see this topic of investing in the hydrogen supply chain? And concretely, what extensions do you see in terms of managing, actually putting them together in the same picture? Because in the current methodology, you kind of need to choose a point of view, but in reality, all actors will need to contribute. So how do you see, I would say, directions of evolution to go towards this kind of integrated decision support tooling for both private and actor to have, I would say, consistent view? Thank you very much.
Thank you first for your remarks and for all the work that we did together during the past 3 years. So yes, for me, the main difference, I think, between the private view and the public view may be the time. I think that the private is looking at a smaller investment period, for example. So I think maybe 5 years is like more is a more relevant time period for a private company, while 10 years is a bit large. And so that could be one of the main difference between the two. And another difference could be that the private companies would be oriented maybe to the site, like a technological site size or project size, and not considering an aggregation of projects that will make like all the territory to evolve, but more concentrating on maybe project at the scale of a plant, for example. So they could use the model to decide, should we go for this kind of plant or that kind of plant, but as a decision maker at the scale of a big territory, you can consider more projects. That's, I think, the main difference between the two views. As to how to bring them together in one modeling view, so I have to say that I didn't really think about that before. But it would be like, of course, because the reality is that we are all in the same boat, I would say, and we have to consider this together. But yeah, maybe it would be possible to implement more level in the modeling, maybe have kind of encapsulated model that could consider the project one by one, with each project optimized and with action from one project to another, and to have like a kind of a meta model bringing it together. So I don't know, maybe that's an idea that just came now. So I don't know if it's possible or not, but there is reflections to do on this topic, I think. Yes. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Now time to move on to the final part involving your supervisors. So maybe starting first by Dr. Pedro Alfonso Nobrera. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
That's correct. So thank you very much. I try to make it short. Anaël, for these 3 years, and congratulations for your work. A big work that we don't see really in your presentation, but it was the fact that you developed the model almost from scratch. So we spent lots of time debugging and looking into data and finding contradictory data sometimes in the literature. So it was really a big work that you came out with. A second aspect that I would like to mention is that we started this thesis back in 2020, and with respect to the remarks of Catherine and Olivier concerning the modeling of the demand, or the technologies that you considered, or the fact that policy is not always considered, the fact that all of this has been changing a lot, and lots of the policy evolutions in the European Union level, it's like it dates from a few months ago. So we still bring some stuff from the thoughts that we had back in 2020. For instance, high temperature electrolysis was considered much more like a lab thing back then, and it's gaining maturity very quickly. European Hydrogen Bank, it dates from a few weeks ago, so we didn't have the time to digest all of this and to include under. And Anna knows that we rerun the code several times to update the hypothesis and so on. And with respect to all of that, I can only admire the work that Anna has done and her resilience in this 3 years. Sorry for all the remarks about the colors on the graphics, and that also made rerunning stuff again and again. I think it made you gain 1 or 2 lines in the perspective sections, things that we don't have the time to do because we are improving the presentation. And a last point of congratulations for your participation in the Monaco Energy Book Challenge. I think it also contributed with a few lines in the perspective section. But I'd like to congratulate you for keeping in touch with the terrain and keeping interesting how technology behaves. Spend a little bit of time in our fuel cell laboratory. I think it's important to connect both works, and you did that very well. So that's all from me.
Thank you very much, Pedro.
Okay, so it's my turn now. Pedro said a lot of things, but I also want to thank you. As you might know, you're my first PhD student as a director, so it's also a step for me. And you can be proud of your work, and I'm really happy that it was you. I mean, so I mean, I can say I'm proud of your work, but it's you that have to be proud of that. So. As also Pedro said, the subject has evolved a lot with the context, and at the beginning I thought we were not early enough because I mean things were starting already on hydrogen when we start working on that. But when I see now what we've done and when I see what has changed, I really think that we're on time, and your work is on time also. To discuss this question of public-private investment, and as you know, in the FOSS area, there's this PICTO association that works on the Sirius study, and they try to put together public actors, private actors to make the right decision, and now they're making studies, not taking decision, and I'm sure we can bring things in these studies with what you've done, and we've already shared with them our results, and that's interesting. It's putting lights on difficult questions, and also the reference, what you call the reference scenario, finally is more the one with the unbounded storage and maybe more renewable. About the European context, I have to say that, as Pedro said, that it's changing a lot, and it's really in the perspective for us to add these subsidies, and I'm sure we will do interesting things with that in the next maybe months or years, because as you know, you were my first PhD student as a director, but also the first PhD student on this subject, and there are many PhD students now that have started working on further work on what you've done, and there will be one also on so there are open position also on this question of CO2 infrastructures, and so there are lots of things that are going to happen after your work. Also, I have to say that the European Commission, I'm pretty sure about that, will update their analysis of REPowerEU, and it will be next month, I think. And so things are changing, and we're changing. We're going to change ourselves too. I also really liked all the remarks that have been done and on this question of the geographical scale and technological scale. There are so many things to do after your work. You've not closed doors, you have opened more than doors. And so, yeah, still a lot of work for the next students, and hopefully not only in the lab, in the whole community. We're really willing to share the data and the code so that it can be a reproducible research. That's important for us. So thanks again for this great work, and I'm happy that you're staying with us a bit more.
One more year.
One more year.
Thank you very much, Robin.
If there are no more questions from the jury, the tradition is usually to ask people who have the doctorate in the audience whether they do have some comments or questions to be raised. No, it's noon, so obviously.
I have just a comment, just on behalf of other PhD students. Yeah, first of all, congratulations, and second of all, thank you for your generosity of your time, for especially me and Quentin, who work on similar subjects. You were, even though you had a lot of redoing your graphs and things like that to do, you're always very available to help us get started when we first arrived here. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Owen.
Now to go on to the jury to go in the deliberation room. Stress.
Je me suis embrouillée.
Non, je pense que ça montre bien quel point il s'est.
Je pense que si tu leur laissais le temps, ils posaient avec des images.
Ouais.
Sur les temps. Bah, et normalement, les rapporteurs, ils ont 30 minutes chacun.
Poser des questions.
Non. Si, mais je connais quelqu'un qui s'est assuré à 5 ou 6 heures. Tu les voyais, elle était trop nulle. Mais en plus, il m'a oublié qu'il m'a posé la même question, on faisait venir
Oui, non, je pense qu'il utilise quoi.
Oui, il faut expliquer, développer des outils français. Il y a tout collaboratif, c'est collaboratif avec du collaboratif.
Je connais le sujet.
Quelqu'un m'a dit qu'il y avait des petits sourds américains.
Ouais, non, ça.
Après,
c'est comme externalité de
bon d'avoir parlé à en fait, le force de frappe,
il y a peut-être une valeur à
attribuer je vais m'agrégé.
C'est quoi une question?
Ouais, qui vont utiliser, en tout cas, qui vont utiliser pas que ça. Ou
oui, on reste
voilà, j'avais vu un
Oui, alors, moi, je travaille sur l'industrie, fabriquer des trucs en acier, je crois que on ne pas dans l'acier.
Après, le modèle va être
peu importe à quel point on va décroître.
Pourquoi ça a autant augmenté par proportion à
des données jusqu'au résultat,
du charbon concentré.
avec une volonté que ce soit un peu open source, en primaire en tout cas, et quand même une volonté de garder une sorte de privacy sur les autres, parce qu'on pense
Ils sont encore non, mais
sur la partie
avec les moins 80% d'utilisation d'hydrogène dans les raffineries, c'est parce que c'est dans l'utilisation des énergies fossiles pour la voiture, c'est une autre solution pour raffiner.
Ah non, il n'y a pas d'autre solution pour raffiner.
Pour lesquels, en fait, on
Par contre, on peut arrêter
assez pertinent dans le sens où on n'a pas la main sur toutes les approximations qui sont faites.
En réalité, ça c'est un peu biaisé, dans le sens où
c'est documenté, mais c'est tellement, il y a
plein d'autres solutions en fait, qui peuvent être faites par l'hydrogène.
l'ensemble des
la résolution du problème relaxé,
il me semble que je l'ai vu dans le.
Donc on a toujours besoin d'un
pardon. Sur le rythme, ça va.
Je considérais que sur le schéma,
c'est pas loin d'être.
Et le schéma,
j'ai pas pensé à se dire, mais moi j'ai fait en 2020, maintenant ça fait 3 ans, et des trucs. On dit c'est complètement fou d'avoir pensé ça. C'est plus actuel. Et à chaque fois qu'il y avait un nouveau rapport, c'était ah vas-y, t'as vu des hypothèses du nouveau rapport, tu peux pas mettre à jour, d'abord que ça change.
Il y a un usage où vous êtes mis il n'y a pas que ça. Hier, la décision a été prise en comité stratégique. Moi, je pense que c'est une bonne idée.
Il a parlé de
se positionner là dès maintenant.
Pourquoi utiliser les médias pour produire de l'hydrogène plutôt que de faire des trucs.
Non, je sais pas marché.
En fait, c'est mieux.
Moi,
je l'ai pas mis la raison pour laquelle
qui était plus actif l'équipe de données.
Ouais, mais c'est bien.
Il y a un conflit entre l'usage de
bon, après, le modèle en soi n'est pas. Une fois que tu vis ta
oui, mais de toute façon, une grosse demande de l'hydrogène. Moi, je n'ai pas du tout parlé de hydrogène, enfin de électricité, hydrogène, électricité. Parce que ça, ça veut dire que ça n'aura pas besoin, il y a d'autres moyens de les moyens de technologie industrielle qui ne pas du tout. Après,
C'est en utilisant la fonctionnelle,
ça rentrait dans les
ça c'est uniquement la
moi, les propositions hexagonales, c'est vraiment faire des trucs comme ça. Dans la batterie, c'est à l'échelle de la journée. C'est toujours dynamique, voir le maximum de la semaine, c'est à l'échelle d'une saison. Oui, non, mais pour ça, on n'a pas besoin du tout.
Ça, c'est contraire.
Comme il disait, on avait déjà
mais non, mais le système est suffisamment variable pour pas avoir besoin
On doit aller intermédiaire,
Et comment on fait pour stocker les congés? Rien, tu le mets dans une bulle, tu fais forage de comme le
je pense que, en fait, c'est pas la même visualisation qui est passée. Ça fait du collège que j'avais pas il y a aussi du gaz,
super lourd, par exemple, pour les voitures. Tu peux le. Là, c'est pas mal.
C'est pas pour qu'il passe dessus.
Ça a l'air de refaire un peu l'osmosis. Ça paraît plus dynamique.
Ouais, parce que.
Non, non, mais c'est juste.
C'est fermé en haut. Mais non, parce que si tu le fermes en haut et que c'est la porte, en fait, il explose. Ah, d'accord. Ah oui, donc c'est juste sur mais par contre,
Les licences de publicité.
La plupart du temps, oui, quand t'as pas trop de place, tu peux c'est assez
Mais moi, tu auras toujours aussi passer avec
Par contre, à Manos, toute la bande de base, j'ai vu que pendant c'est du sel. Ils injectent de l'eau sous pression pour dissoudre le sel.
Sans le rendre inutilisable,
et ça, c'est pas
ouais, je pense qu'on va le voir comme ça. C'est plutôt. Peut-être qu'ils ont fait des modules code. Maintenant, c'est tout fait en
voyage. C'est dans un monde où la production d'électricité, il y aura peut-être des petits oui, mais pour pas produire de l'hydrogène avec l'électricité, qui serait fait pour produire de l'électricité, ça non, utiliser directement l'électricité.
Ça non, mais
genre dans la végétation, c'est l'usage industriel.
Non, mais c'est sûr. En fait,
à mon avis, plus ça va aller, plus en tout cas.
À l'échelle locale, pourquoi un territoire va plutôt décider d'avoir une production locale d'hydrogène et donc de développer des énergies locales plutôt que juste développer des énergies locales et les exporter et par exemple apporter sur le hydrogène d'ailleurs.
Oui, mais les GRT. Ah, pas les GRT, ça c'est un autre.
Parce que ça s'importe facilement les gens.
Moi, je
Ça
pense.
se transporte.
Moi, j'ai l'impression que c'était pas très.
Moi, j'ai écrit, alors, je n'ai pas précisé, mais c'est vraiment des gens. Mais c'est aussi parce que je n'ai pas
Je pense que le problème,
parce que tu dis que si jamais on a des conflits d'usage
l'intégralité, tu veux dire qu'en gros, tu as l'application logique toutes les centrales avec chômage même c'est pas juste CCGT Hall, c'est vraiment les paquets.
Si tu as plus d'usage dans l'utilisation là, tu vas faire un petit peu. Je crois que ça peut être. Tu vas avoir ta thèse. Ça n'arrivait jamais.
Tu vas voir en gros le détail aussi. Je vais voir
ça a plus un rapport à un truc qui est officiel, c'est qu'il n'y a pas de
max de remplissage, de remplissage, tu vas voir après, avec ça, tu as la PECD, on appelle Climate Database, là tu vas avoir les ONR.
Moi, je trouvais que c'était pas ah, mais moi, je les ai vus parce que c'est où j'ai regardé le.
Mais c'est pour ça qu'il faut implémenter ça dans le site. Tu vas avoir un problème.
Effectivement, mais quand on arrive à les avoir sur
il est pareil pour tout le monde. Oui, mais en fait, ils sont simplifiés avec les autres. Ah, ouais, d'accord.
C'est plutôt du coup. Parler de
ouais, mais ça, à la limite,
un jour, tu présenteras à la grosse 30, je ne sais pas combien. Elle interviendra à la COP, je ne sais pas combien. Tout le monde, apparemment, c'est chercheur.
non, mais je me pose des questions. C'est dur de voir.
Oui, c'est bon. Ça, c'est pas bon.
La simulation, je sais pas.
Il est très complet qu'il fasse.
C'est la différence d'avoir un truc à Paris avec une école à Marseille et un truc à Paris avec une école à Hawaï.
Il pourrait même courir dans des endroits différents. Non, c'est
ici, il y a un truc sur la gauche.
En fait, la IE.
Pardon, tu viens ici, à un moment sur ta gauche, quand tu rentres dans la forêt, ils seront en train de tout raser, parce que c'est la base de mais c'est impressionnant, ils ont tout posé, quoi.
Ah bah, il y avait...
Si, c'est bon.
Mais tu vois, en tant que
Ah oui, ça,
c'est pas.
Ça a été pensé avant tout. Pareil sur. Même avant ça, pour un système analytique, et en gros, les deux modèles, c'est vraiment supply chain et Diablo, quoi. Et après, avec ça, on est rentré vraiment
Alors,
simulation, optimisation, and PSA pour
là, je fais la dernière étape de la thèse.
ça, je pourrais faire des calculs optimales de
base.
Là, c'est linéarisé au vertical, mais c'est vraiment.
Un modèle d'optimisation des installations.
En fait, de base, je pense que ça, c'est à chaque fois. Je regarde sur mes c'est pas tout le temps.
Oui, mais ouais, quand je pense moi,
C'est pour eux, les clients. C'est très pour eux.
et une fois que tu as un peu la
Mais par contre, il y a un restaurant. C'est bon?
Oui, oui. Donc, tu tiens, et après, c'est un mec qui a moi, ça va trop jargonner.
Oui, bah aussi, enfin,
Ouais, c'est intéressant d'ailleurs la remarque sur l'éducation
avec Arnaud.
le matin, c'est pas exactement, mais je pense que c'est
vraiment à l'aise.
Moi, je regardais, 20 minutes, en fait, on avait déjà la présentation du modèle. Normalement, c'est 20 minutes. T'as un peu en avance, et à la fin, j'ai vu que les dernières slides, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Voilà. La première, t'as fait chier avec les questions.
Ah, mais l'avantage avec le site Paris, puis il y avait des réponses, il y avait Pedro était un petit peu. Et les machines, regardez les PC, ça fait.
Ils sont venus et tout, mais de l'art de ils l'ont refusé. Mais on va resoumettre par exemple et ensuite j'étais invitée à ce que je fasse. On a suivi dans le journal, on a eu les retours et
c'était quoi la raison pour laquelle
en gros, c'est la manière dont on vend les résultats parce que le premier matériau que j'ai fait, c'est pas quelque chose de nouveau dans la littérature. On a fait des résultats très on l'a plus souvent vu, on a réussi à certifier les trucs. On aurait dû se vendre en disant on a réussi à faire un bac. Et en plus, on a vu sur le contexte sur les il y avait des petits jeux.
Et ouais, moi je sais pas. En fait, j'ai fait gaz vraiment là sur la trame.
Voilà, on va réorienter le
marché du gaz.
Ouais, c'est bien d'avoir
non, c'est ça. Et du coup, comme ça, enfin, si j'ai un peu d'écriture sur
Ils ont pas les moyens.
On a des petits agents. Ah bah, la langue officielle de 500 ans,
Récemment, la NJ, j'ai l'impression un truc du baron de Weber.
préféré que ce soit l'étranger.
Après, ils ont fait des arguments, je sais pas. On a l'impression que, oui.
Bon, bah, on va l'annoncer. Mais voilà.
On va se retrouver avec cette situation.
Ah bah ouais.
C'est cool de parler aux gens.
Ouais. Je faisais capable de
Je veux voir les noms. Pourtant, j'ai fait contrôle F et j'ai remplacé.
Ouais, mais tu
c'est que c'est l'hexagone, c'est l'hexagone.
En fait, les gens
ça va?
C'est plus les ah, Capitaine Moujon? Capitaine Moujon?
Ah, Grenoble.
Ah, c'est celui-là. Je crois qu'elle a de la famille, Capitaine Moujon.
En fait, j'avais un cette présenter quand en fait, c'est vrai?
Je savais pas qu'il était moi, je connais.
liquéfaction d'hydrogène,
D'accord.
vraiment le gros réacteur d'hydrogène au monde là, à Las Vegas.
Ah,
Après, j'ai fait la côté de ce projet pour la Corée, le projet pour l'Alaska. Je travaille dans l'hydrogène.
Tu aurais dit un ami, tu aurais dit un moteur. En principe, ces projets-là aux États-Unis, c'est habitué là-bas.
Non, c'est un projet qui est en plein pendant le Covid. C'est-à-dire que pour aller aux États-Unis.
Et après, t'attaques bientôt dans t'as déjà attaqué? Il n'y a pas quel genre de vacances, il n'y a pas de semaine? Ah si, je suis en vacances jusqu'au 1er janvier.
Impératif. En fait, défendre les
Je pense même pendant les temps normaux, c'est difficile d'entrer dans le
First thing I would do. Ah, c'est là, c'est dur.
Ah oui,
ça pouvait être temps. Service à la planète.
Oui,
là, je travaille.
Ah,
de toute façon, nous, à Grenoble, on n'a pas le reste de la chaîne.
Moi, je vais le recul, donner des indicateurs sur les clients pour être sûr de pouvoir répondre à ces questions. C'est l'équilibre et ça reste vraiment.
Non,
c'est pas de Cléo, simplement.
C'est pas.
L'application de température, c'est plus.
C'est lent. D'accord. Donc, Sylvain, il est un peu super avec
Avec les loges, avec Faris justement qui est là dans le jeu. C'est mon web conseil, moi je vais faire ça. Oui, ah oui. Il a pris la place de Robin.
Moi, non, c'est Robin chez l'équipe.
À Lyon. C'est à Lyon maintenant, si je dis pas de bêtises.
Ce stage, c'est 5 km de
Grenoble. À Lyon. Est-ce que tu connais Axel? Elle vient de la R&D. Elle est partie à la thèse.
Ah oui,
c'est la seule personne. Elle est venue.
Non, elle vient de. Et elle est au loge avant.
Elle était au loge avant, elle était à.
Ouais, mais si, mais j'ai bossé avec elle.
J'avais pas d'avis, je crois que c'était sérieux.
C'est celui qui fait un peu le moins, enfin, le moins sur la géographie.
Ah oui, mais.
ça fait que français, parce que c'est quand il est
comment vous gérez l'intégration
pour liquéfier l'hydrogène,
diffusion de branches, etc.
en plus on dépeint des fonctions changera pas.
On va attendre Jean, mon chef.
Ah, c'est vrai? Ah, d'accord. Ok, ok. Ah, donc,
Sur les projets.
D'accord.
Okay, can you hear us, Magnus?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we just wait for not more than 5 minutes that my boss Georges they arrive, because they have several buildings. You know, the School of Mines is a very big school, and so they're arriving.
J'ai pas fait attention à la thèse de Stéphane aussi. Normalement, les gens qui ont commencé avant, qui ont ceux qui ont commencé avant.
Tiens, si tu veux, il y a. C'est en français? Non, je te donnerai la version avec.
Le lever des choses, si on pouvait pas les
non, je vais. Ah là, je suis là, ouais. Au début, c'est resté assez clair. Ah non.
C'est pas le partage principal, il faut Je me bats facile de là. Mais c'est pas mon ordinateur. Ouais.
Ah oui, ça, Ok, j'ai une autre idée.
Parce que là, il nous voit bien, c'est juste que nous, on ne voit pas les. Oui, tu peux faire ça.
Ah oui.
Tu peux débrancher mon ordinateur.
Sinon, on tourne ton ordinateur.
C'est quand ta première année de vie, tu rentrais dans ma chambre et tu pouvais gagner de euros par
On est reparti sur la présentation.
Oui, oui.
Je pense que c'est bon.
Provide you with the outcome of the deliberation of the jury. This is Anaël JODRY. We are thrilled to provide you with the report that has been decided. So I will first stress the fact that the jury has unanimously appreciated the presentation that you gave today, that reveal that you have prepared a rich doctoral dissertation that provide a rich representation of the energy system you have studied. That's the study and the results you have obtained by simulating this system provide insightful results for the understanding of ways that the fault basin is going to evolve and the ways the hydrogen industry is going to evolve there. During the defense, we have unanimously stressed that you presented your work in a very pedagogical way, and we have unanimously appreciated your quality to communicate the outcome of a complex model in a simple and easy way to grasp from a variety of people with different expertise in the jury. We also noted that you answered satisfactorily to the multiple questions that were raised, and these questions were wide-ranging in scope, and you answered satisfactorily to these various elements. And the defense also reveals that you have a wide understanding of the models and the topics that you have addressed, which are typically important skills that are expected from doctoral students. That's why, if you give them, in light of all of this, the jury has unanimously decided to provide you and to grant you with a doctoral degree from the University Paris Sciences Lettres, PSL Star, and we congratulate you for this remarkable outcome.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Olivier Massol, the president of the jury, for coming all the way here and for animating the defense. And thank you for reviewing my work. And I want also to thank all the other members of the jury. Catherine Azaro-Pantel and Magnus Korpas for their insightful remark about the report and for all the questions. Yeah, they are here. I also want to thank Philippe Quirion for all his review work and for the question you asked today and the question you asked last time. Also, we saw each other for the seminar for the PhD student. And I want to thank Faris for coming here. And I also want to thank Robin Molinier. I don't know if he's still online or not, but for all the time we spent together questioning ourselves how to make this work evolve. And thank you very much for all the work you've done with me. And finally, I of course want to thank Pedro and Robin for all the guidance, for all the advices, or all the everything that we did together. So very thank you a lot. That you also like the big part of the project, and thank you very much for everything. Je vais aussi remercier en français en fait toute l'équipe du laboratoire, les autres doctorants du labo. C'était vraiment très agréable de passer du temps avec vous. Il y a le travail, mais il y a aussi tout ce qui est à côté, et j'étais très contente d'être à Percé pour faire ma thèse. Donc je veux aussi particulièrement remercier les gens de mon bureau qui partagent vraiment au quotidien. Eleni, Riham, I don't know if you're still here, but Riham, thank you a lot for complaining with me every day. Merci à Julia pour tous les gâteaux que tu nous apportes, tous les posters que tu as fait. Et puis bon courage du coup pour la suite. Merci aussi à Kevin qui était là au début surtout et avec qui j'ai partagé beaucoup de discussions philosophiques et aussi de discussions sur le travail. Donc merci pour l'accueil et merci pour tout ce qu'on a fait ensemble. Merci Owen. Owen est mon colocataire. Donc, merci aussi pour le soutien à la maison, les petits repas. Et merci d'ailleurs à tous mes autres colocataires. Je ne sais pas s'il y en a encore qui sont en ligne, mais en tout cas pour le soutien moral et psychologique à la maison. Merci Quentin pour les blagues. Je ne sais pas si... Merci Sylvain pour les discussions. Merci à Flavien pour son soutien, surtout durant la dernière année, mais surtout pour m'avoir bien aidé à me changer les idées du travail quand c'était trop pour le travail. Et puis, bien sûr, merci à toutes les personnes que je ne peux pas forcément remercier individuellement, mais en tout cas qui m'ont aidé. Merci aussi à tous mes amis qui m'ont soutenu de plus ou moins loin. Il y en a beaucoup qui ont assisté à distance, je sais, donc merci pour ça. Merci à tous les ECC qui se sont connectés. Et merci à ceux qui ont fait le déplacement pour venir jusqu'ici, parce que c'était assez loin et je n'étais pas forcément une très bonne hôte. Donc, merci à Yannouk et Raphaël d'être venus jusqu'ici. Merci à Pierre-Yves. Je ne sais pas s'il a suivi la soutenance à distance, mais c'est un peu à cause de lui ou grâce à lui, on va dire, que je suis embarquée dans cette histoire. Donc, quand même, merci pour m'avoir aidé à trouver le sujet et m'avoir aidé à m'engager sur ça. Et puis, bien sûr, merci à ma famille, ma grande famille, une partie à distance, mais merci à Sam d'être venu jusqu'ici. J'apprécie, je suis très touchée. Merci à ma sœur adorée d'être venue aussi et d'avoir partagé l'aventure avec moi. Et puis merci à ma maman, parce que quand même, sans elle, il n'y aurait rien. Mais surtout, c'est elle qui m'a toujours motivée depuis que je suis toute petite, qui ne m'a pas mis de limites, qui m'a dit que je pouvais faire tout ce que j'avais, de réaliser toutes mes ambitions. Et si aujourd'hui, je suis docteur, c'est beaucoup grâce à ma maman. Donc merci, et merci d'être venu me soutenir. Merci à tous.
ministère de l'enseignement supérieur promeut l'intégrité académique. Et je crois que vous avez fait le choix de
c'est vrai, j'allais oublier.
Le fameux serment.
Pardon, merci. J'allais oublier. So, in the presence.
Tu peux lire en
Parce qu'il y a des
français.
trucs écrits à la
Oui,
main.
parce qu'il vient compter l'anglais et livre français.
Ah, ok, d'accord. En présence de mes pairs, parvenu à l'issue de mon doctorat en énergétique et génie des procédés, et ayant ainsi pratiqué dans ma quête du savoir l'exercice d'une recherche scientifique exigeante en cultivant la rigueur intellectuelle, la réflexivité éthique et dans le respect des principes de l'intégrité scientifique, je m'engage pour ce qui dépendra de moi dans la suite de ma carrière professionnelle, quel qu'en soit le secteur ou le domaine d'activité, à maintenir une conduite intègre dans mon rapport au savoir, mes méthodes et mes résultats. Et pour ceux qui seront toujours là, à 5 h cet après-midi, il y aura un petit goûter. Et voilà. Et voilà. Trop gentil, merci. C'est vrai. C'est vrai. Merci beaucoup.
Peut-être une photo avec. Ah oui, avec peut-être en projetant aussi.
Ah oui, avec.
On n'a pas réussi. Le technicien qui gère. Il est parti.
Est-ce qu'on se mettrait à côté de cet écran-là?
Oui, voilà.
Proposition.
Par contre, c'est pas dans le.
Pas dans la oui, c'est le problème.
Ah oui, on va
Oui, certes.
Merci.
Félicitations. Oh, bravo.
Très encourageant de vous avoir ici, d'avoir les réactions et c'est très bienveillant, merci.
Quel est l'avenir?
Peut-être j'ai déjà commencé en fait. Un peu de doctorat sur ce sujet qui est proche, mais à la fois un peu plus sur la spatialisation.
C'est bien, oui, on a réussi à la garder.
On lâche pas les bons éléments.
Alors, du coup, il y a peut-être une corruption et taille.
À chaque fois que je suis il y a même
on va vous remercier du côté à distance. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oui. So thanks a lot for being there with us, and now we can free you so that we can have lunch, and I hope we will see each other soon in real Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.